Millions of Muslims bypassed the Gulf's towering wealth and shared religion for a one-way journey to Europe. Saudi Arabia and the UAE host over 16 million Muslim foreigners, and not one can ever belong. Europe, by contrast, promises citizenship, cash, and a new life within years. Why does religious brotherhood lose to legal status? And what consequences does this reveal about the world's migration crisis? Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates are home to millions of foreign-born Muslims, 10.8 million in Saudi Arabia and 6 million in the United Arab Emirates. Yet none can ever become citizens, no matter how many years they live, work, or raise families there. The rules are absolute. Citizenship by birth is reserved for those with Saudi or Emirati fathers, and naturalization for outsiders is almost unheard of. Children born on Gulf soil to foreign parents inherit their parents' nationality or remain stateless, locked out of the only country they have ever known. Even after decades, the door to belonging stays shut. Europe's system stands in stark contrast. Refugees and migrants who are granted protection in countries like Germany, Sweden, or France step onto a path that leads to permanent residency and eventually to citizenship. The timeline varies: 5 years in Sweden, 6 to 8 years in Germany, and up to 10 years in Italy, but the structure is clear. Permanent legal residence, language and integration tests, and a clean record can unlock full membership. In 2023, Germany alone naturalized over 200,000 people, with Syrians and Turks making up nearly half. France and Sweden each grant tens of thousands of new citizenships every year. For many, the promise of a future, of a passport, voting rights, and security for their children outweighs any sense of religious kinship with the Gulf. In the Gulf, foreign workers remain outsiders for life. In Europe, a recognized refugee can become a citizen, own property, and build a future for their family within a decade. The difference is not just legal, it shapes the entire trajectory of migration and the stakes for those willing to risk everything for a new beginning. State support for migrants in Europe begins from the first day of the asylum process. National reception systems provide housing, often in government-run centres or subsidised apartments, while applications are processed. Monthly cash allowances cover food, clothing, and essentials. In Germany, an adult asylum seeker receives up to €410 each month, plus additional funds for children. Healthcare is included, with access to doctors and hospitals for all registered applicants. Children are enrolled in public schools immediately, and integration classes are offered to adults. These services continue through the entire legal process, which can last months or even years. Even after a claim is rejected, many remain eligible for basic support while appeals are pending. In contrast, Gulf states operate under a model of exclusion. Migrant workers in Saudi Arabia or UAE depend entirely on their employers for housing, health insurance, and wages. There is no state-funded social safety net. If a worker loses their job, housing and health coverage disappear overnight, and deportation follows quickly. Families are rarely permitted to join, and children have no right to attend public schools. The state does not intervene if a worker falls ill or faces hardship. The gap is stark. In Europe, the state assumes responsibility for the basic needs of migrants and their families. In the Gulf, migrants are treated as temporary labor, not future citizens, and are excluded from the protections and benefits that local populations take for granted. This difference shapes not just the journey, but the daily reality of life for millions. Every foreign worker in the Gulf is bound to an employer by the Kafala sponsorship system. This system gives employers total control over a migrant's legal status, job, and even their ability to leave the country. Passports are routinely confiscated on arrival. Changing jobs without permission is illegal. If a worker tries to escape abuse or unpaid wages, employers can file a runaway charge, turning a labor dispute into a criminal offense. Detention and immediate deportation often follow. Human Rights Watch and Walk Free report the scale of abuse is staggering. In the United Arab Emirates alone, an estimated 132,000 people live in conditions that meet the definition of modern slavery. Across the Gulf region, that number reaches 2.4 million, most of them domestic workers and laborers from South Asia and Africa. They work long hours for little pay, exposed to violence and threats, with no legal path to challenge their employers or seek protection from the state. The Kafala system is not a hidden relic. It is the foundation of the Gulf's labor market, supporting construction booms and luxury lifestyles while trapping millions in cycles of exploitation. For Muslim migrants, the promise of shared faith or language is meaningless in the face of a system that denies them basic rights, freedom of movement, and any hope of settlement. The reality is clear. The Gulf's model is designed to keep workers temporary and powerless, making it a destination to avoid for those seeking safety and a future. One approval in Europe rarely means one new arrival. Family reunification laws across the EU transform each successful asylum application into a gateway for spouses, children, and sometimes parents to join the original migrant. Germany, for example, processes thousands of family reunification requests each month, with the Federal Office for Migration and Refugees, BAMF, reporting that most Syrian and Afghan refugees who gain protection quickly file to bring over close relatives. The numbers add up fast. For every Syrian granted asylum, 3 to 5 additional family members typically follow within a few years. This multiplier effect means that a single approval can lead to an entire extended family resettling in Europe, not just one individual. The process is structured and legal. Once a refugee is recognized, they can apply for family reunification, usually for their spouse and children under 18. In practice, documentation hurdles and embassy backlogs can delay reunification, but the right is enshrined in law. The impact is visible in the numbers. In 2022, Germany alone approved more than 40,000 family reunification visas for Syrians. Sweden and France follow similar policies, with thousands of family members arriving each year under these provisions. For migrants, the promise is clear. Europe offers not just safety for the individual, but a path to bring loved ones out of danger and into a new life. In contrast, Gulf states restrict or outright prohibit family reunification for most workers, leaving families divided for years or even decades. The European approach turns each arrival into a potential chain of migration, multiplying the demographic impact far beyond the initial journey. Crossing into Europe means entering the Schengen area, a single zone covering 27 countries with no internal border checks. Once an asylum seeker is granted protection in any Schengen state, whether Germany, France, or Sweden, they gain the right to move freely between all member countries. This legal framework transforms one approval into access to an entire continent. The Schengen Code allows recognized refugees to live, work, and travel across national lines without further visas or permits. Even those whose claims are rejected often attempt to reapply in other countries, a practice known as asylum shopping. The result is a geographic advantage unique to Europe. A migrant who arrives in Greece or Italy can end up settling in the Netherlands or Spain, all under a single set of mobility rules. This freedom of movement expands opportunities and complicates enforcement, setting Europe apart from the closed borders and rigid controls of the Gulf states. A rejected asylum claim in Europe rarely means immediate removal. Legal appeals can stretch for 2 to 5 years, during which applicants remain in the country, supported by state benefits. This lengthy window, combined with strict oversight from courts, media, and non-governmental organizations, makes forced deportation a complex and often delayed process. Smuggling networks exploit these delays, funneling people through gateway countries like Greece and Italy, then deeper into the continent. The profits are staggering, according to the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, UNODC, which estimates annual revenues from human smuggling to Europe in the billions. Meanwhile, a free press and watchdog groups in Europe expose abuses and hold authorities accountable, a level of scrutiny absent in the Gulf. The result is a lucrative, persistent flow of migrants toward Europe, shaped as much by legal loopholes and oversight as by geography. Europe's open-door policies shape the future. Demographics, politics, and identity shift in real time. As Gulf states keep their gates locked, Europe absorbs the impact. What happens next isn't about borders or religion, it's about whose rules decide who belongs. Drop your perspective in the comments below.